I am Dracula, and I welcome you to my house.
"1997 marks the 100th anniversary of the publication of this book, Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, you might never have read it in any of the 44 languages into which it's been translated, but you'd have had to be living in a box in Transylvania not to have seen at least one of the 800+ movies that have been made about the undead, blood-sucking one and his vampire relatives. So, what is it about this creature of the night, this fang-toothed, cape-wearing fiend that continues to fascinate us today? That's the task I've set myself for this evening, to find out what puts the cool into Dracula. Did he exist? Does he exist today? Are there in fact real-life vampires out there who would regard you and I as no more than walking, talking snacks? It's scary stuff. So prepare to have your spines tingled, your nerves jangled, your very senses pringled, as I go in search of Dracula.
The appeal lies in the fact that you have a character with immense power. I think that's the crucial word, power.
Shiver in the neck, you know, the thought of those teeth going in. I don't know, what is it? What is it?
The neck is the big erogenous zone, and I don't know, the whole iconography of it, of somebody coming around in a big black cape and sucking women's necks, young virgins, and then turning them into people that come back from the dead, is just such a fantastic and camp sort of, you know, whatever. If you take it seriously, that it's really scary or that it's ridiculous, it seems to work every time it comes out.
I want you to bring me before nightfall a set of post-mortem knives.
An autopsy? Lucy?
No, not exactly. I just want to cut off her head and take out her heart.
I'd always seen him as some kind of, you know, bogeyman. You know, he's the monster that comes in the night and, you know, and he's got these teeth and he drains you of your blood.
I condemn you to living death, to eternal hunger for living blood.
I think that mortals also, you know, want to believe in that immortality at the price of, you know, making a pact with the devil almost, kind of thing.
I think he was a guy who was sort of an alcoholic. He needed blood occasionally, so that was his appetite. He's just a guy who, rather than going to a restaurant, he feasted wherever he could.
There's no way in this life to stop me. And to that end,
Bram Stoker's novel places Dracula's hometown in Transylvania, which literally means land beyond the forest, and is now part of modern-day Romania. What better place to start our search for the truth, but the whole truth about Dracula, than there, Transylvania. Don't be fooled by the picture postcard rustic charm, my friends. This idyllic landscape has a bloody history, for it was once home to the infamous Vlad Dracul, better known as Vlad Tepes, the Impaler, inventor of the human kebab and the inspiration for our Count Dracula, the Prince of Darkness.
Who was your master?
His name was Count Dracula, an old and distinguished family.
Such is the popularity of Bram Stoker's Dracula that since it was first published in the 1890s, it has never been out of print. Curiously, it was not available legally here in Transylvania until the 1990s, after the collapse of the communist regime. When it did finally come out, it proved to be immensely popular. They estimate that over a third of the local population have read it, and not just because it's a gripping good yarn, but also because they were curious to find out exactly what Bram Stoker made of their neighbourhood and desperate to find out why every year busloads of tourists like me turn up hoping to meet real-life vampires.
Look, up there, the castle.
What's that place?
What place?
The castle.
I don't see no castle.
That's because you're not looking, idiot.
As the legend of Vlad the Impaler and the whole Dracula mythology become Romania's greatest tourist attraction, it's now no longer that simple to get to the bottom of what actually happened. Just about everywhere you go in this beautiful country, you'll find a charmingly toothless native willing to tell you that, yes, young Vlad did grow up around here and do some of his best work. There are many who don't believe that such a place as Castle Dracula actually exists, but it's well documented that here at Castle Bran, Vlad was not only a guest, but later a prisoner. And as brooding Gothic monstrosities go, I think you'll agree, it's a beaut.
The castle? You in the bed, I'm not going there.
It's a chilling thought, but if Lloyd Grossman had ever gone through the keyhole here, he might never have survived to make the mould-breaking MasterChef series. But few of the local tourist wares show Vlad's favourite pastime. Very nice. Oh, this is nice. He loved his steak, and he liked it served very bloody indeed. Hello, friendly woodsman. Could you fill me in on a few things on the whole steak and impaling business here, I wonder? Vlad Tepes impaled people, I believe. Do you know how he went about it, how he impaled them?
How was it?
Well, it varied, but always included a large, pointy stake. Much like this one, yes. One of his favourite methods of impaling was to harness a big, strong horse to each of the prisoner's legs, while the stake was carefully introduced so as not to kill instantly, through the heart or the navel, for example. This meant it could take some days before the prisoner died, you see. If you were impaled through the bottom, however, the stake would pierce the entrails right up to the neck.
Aside from the impalings, did Vlad torture his victims in any other ways?
Oh, good heavens, yes. I mean, other tortures he used included, let's think, burning, blinding, strangulation, hacking off of noses and ears, that was very popular, the hacking out of the sexual organs in the case of women, scalping, skinning, oh, and of course, boiling alive, that was very popular.
Did the size of the stake matter?
Oh, yes. I mean, the more important you were, the higher the stake, so the longer it took for you to, you know, slide down it.
You couldn't knock me up a couple of small ones for the kids, could you?
Da. What?
And so it was that some 500 years later, via historical fact and fictional fantasy, Vlad the Impaler reawoke on celluloid as Nosferatu, the vampire.
And actually, I saw Nosferatu because it became a classic film, and it is very spooky. There's no question about it. Brilliantly done.
He was so ugly and everything, but I think there's that power. It hasn't, you know, the transformation is disgusting. You know, you've got these horrible fingers and color of death. I mean, even though it was in black and white, it was still very zombie-ish and very frightening.
Nosferatu was an inspiration just because it's wonderful. It's still scary. It's spooky.
You can't help being fondest of the movies you grew up with. And when it comes to Dracula, one name and one name only springs to my mind. Hammer. The company that churned out Dracula films like they were going out of style, which eventually they did. But at the time, it didn't seem to matter that the bats were made out of rubber and that some of the human extras looked like they were part human, part tree. Because Hammer had two great things going for them. beautiful virginal maidens, their heaving bosoms barely contained by their peasant garb or white flowing nighties. And Christopher Lee. Of course, Christopher Lee.
Christopher Lee has that incredible power in the eyes. I mean, it is. Has nothing to do with talking or trying to psych somebody by twisting words. It's all in here. And of course, the look, the voice, the look.
He had the whole package.
Oh, yes.
The most important element as far as the audience is concerned, when you're playing a somewhat nightmarish character like that, is that you should show the terrible sadness that exists within them. Because there's this awful compulsion to do things they can't resist, driven by demons. I've always tried to surprise the audience, to do the unexpected, to show them something they didn't expect, that they weren't prepared for, that wasn't conventional. I've always tried that, to give that element in my performance which makes the audience feel almost sorry for you.
Christopher Lee said, "This is one of the most difficult pieces of acting ever." And I thought, don't you just put your teeth in and put your cloak on and you're away, aren't you? And I suppose it's because one just accepts him as Dracula and doesn't think it could be difficult, but he does bring enormous dignity to the part, and brings the full presence of his personality to play, doesn't he?
You just wouldn't want to get stuck in a lift with him. When you actually were auditioned for the role, did they have any kind of particular requirements for you?
Oh, no, I wasn't auditioned. I was just asked to do it. But when I saw some of the rushes, I realised that when screaming, you need white fillings, and I went to the dentist and got my fillings made white. He got pretty tired pretty soon being a victim. I rather enjoyed moving from victim to predator, I must say. But I'll give you a very good example of the sort of acting that a victim has to do, shall I? That sort of thing, is it?
You know, I haven't seen anything like that since my honeymoon night.
You really mustn't go quite for the jugular when you go in there, Jonathan.
When you were taking part in the making of Dracula AD 72, did you realise that it would be as fondly remembered today as it actually is, as all the Hammer films are?
No, I don't think I did. And I didn't realise that it would be a genre of films that had a limited lifespan. I think we thought that Hammer films would be made forever, as indeed one probably hoped that Ealing comedies would be made forever.
Do not meddle, or you will have to deal with me.
You are Count Dracula. Of course. Mr. Denham, the powerful recluse. Here you're safe. No one expects to see him. Not in the daytime.
Dracula is scary, yes, but he also has the reputation for being incredibly sexy. In part 2, I'll be looking into just what it is that makes Dracula the sexiest beast on the block. A dark, handsome scoundrel who women find irresistible. Late-night bedroom liaisons, thrusting steaks, heaving bosoms, dripping fangs. How could anyone, for a second, think that Dracula films are sexy? Surely it's all in our minds.
Again, having read the book, I was aware of this enormous power that I mentioned earlier, this erotic power the character has, because it is there. There is, of course, obviously the sexual significance of the bite. There is the significance of drawing blood from someone. It's all there. I didn't consciously do it. It appears that it came over that way. But if you want to take it further, you can also say that there is an equivalent with the Catholic Mass. This is my blood, drink it. There's this tremendous sexual release on the part of the woman. And by that time, I think they knew that they had in this character that very strong sexual element. But I never intended to play it that way, it just happened.
Let me ask you about the other important appeal, it strikes me, as the Hammer movies, in which you supplied, I suppose, for Dracula AD 72, which is there's a requisite amount of glamour.
What do you mean I supplied, you suppose?
Because I don't want to distract from the acting skills that went with it. That's what I'm saying. But there's a lot of... They tend to be full of heaving bosoms. There's normally a diaphanous blouse or two, often being torn asunder as the neck is sought after.
Well, it's the obligatory altar dress that caused me the most problem, because it was looking rather good when it was standing up. But I found that, because one couldn't wear any underwear, that when I was lying down, it was less sort of convincingly rounded. And so we tried sellotape, which then caused an enormous problem for the sound people. But when it was discovered, I can't remember what we did, probably used gaffer tape or something.
So we're talking here then about the uprightness of your physique.
Well, this is it, it's the uprightness of my... Yes, that's correct, Jonathan.
Pertness.
Pertness.
I could go on all day. Let's think of other adjectives we could possibly use here.
Apart from the National Geographic, it was the one place where you could see women's breasts in diaphanous clothing.
Beautifully put.
Absolutely fantastic, thank you.
It was that and, of course, the brass section of your mum's catalogue.
No, we didn't have catalogues where I grew up, no. It was the National Geographic or the Christopher Lee movies.
God bless Hammer.
Yeah.
Go to sleep. Everything is all right now.
Do you think that was a large part of the appeal of the Hammer movies, the diaphanous blouses and the heaving...
Of course. You use everything you can. If it works, use it. That's what Stanislavski said. And you do, don't you?
Stephanie Beacham confided in us that a certain amount of tape was used to ensure that her bosoms heaved only in the right direction.
Yes. Yes.
Did you ever employ the tape?
No, because mine was sort of all right at the time. I mean, I would do that now, but at the time I didn't.
Yours were, as we would
that.
say, cantilevered.
Yeah, they were quite wonderful. I was very proud of my Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry.
A marvel of engineering.
Thank you.
What about the character you played when in Vampire Lovers, of course, where she does seem to specialise in the heaving-bosomed young wenches?
Well, I never saw it as a lesbian film, you see, and everybody laughs at me. Everyone says, oh, yes, yes. I
wouldn't laugh at you. I find it touching.
Do you?
Yeah, I think it's very sweet.
I just thought she loved them from a human point of view, because she was no longer human. She was now an undead dead. You know what I mean?
So she loved their life?
Yes.
You must take everything off. Try it once.
Madeleine Smith, she just loved her, and she gave her
There's
undead...
nothing about Madeleine Smith that you couldn't love. I find her just lovable.
She's just delicious.
I bet she was.
She's just so sweet. I mean, she's... And Camilla, as my name was in the part, was besotted with her loveliness. And she felt very protective about her. And she wanted to save her life. And that's why she drank very little blood. She didn't just kill her off and suck her dry. She just took little by little. You know about that.
Incremental. I would have done it little by little as well. Because it's like, you know, when you have a really good dinner and you're saving little bits for later, for best for last, and you like would leave a little bit of the beef and a little bit of the Yorkshire pud.
You do that?
And say, I'll come back to that.
You do that?
That's how I would have approached Madeleine Smith.
Oh, right. Well, that's what I did, Jonathan. Good. You know, I wanted to save her life, to take her with me
thank you.
Into the beyond.
I think it was noted in those days, and it's why the censors were a little bit worried about Dracula, because the female members of the audience also it had some kind of effect on them. Now, whether they were aware of it may have been very subliminal, but I was very aware of it, and I took advantage.
So it was a very good first date movie?
Great first date movie, yeah, it was wonderful.
I'll protect you from Dracula, and I'll do a little bit of fang-bearing on my own. Not with you, I'm just...
I'm sorry, I thought you were making a proposition
No,
there.
I was...
One acquaintance you haven't made is Lieutenant Pitt, a young man who stands but an inch away from marriage to a lady of noble birth. They'll make a fine pair.
But not as fine a pair as these, eh?
Well, for me, the Hammer House of Horror type of female vampire didn't work too well for me because they were too blatant, they were too obvious. But Lucy in Coppola's version, I thought was very erotic.
I thought it was my kind of duty after reading the book to kind of really bring a lot to the role, and I think, so no one could say to me, oh, you're playing that wrong, that's not how a vampire would be. It had to be my interpretation of it. So I had a lot of fun doing that and just really enjoying it. It was brilliant to kind of get up there and with all those costumes and all the makeup and everything and the blood and just the campness and just really just go as far as I wanted.
Kiss me and caress me, my darling husband, please.
If I were a vampire, I would be looking for hot red young blood, and certainly the young girls played by Sadie Frost, who plays Lucy, and Winona Ryder. They're both very young, and they're both very beautiful, and in a way, both of them quite innocent.
Well, I think anyone creeping into a young girl's room, at midnight, gets the interest rising.
Good night, everybody.
Whether they're going to kiss them here, there, or anywhere. They'll go further.
And what about the whole idea?
Or just take photographs of them. I mean, there's all sorts of kinky stuff going on these days.
I've never yet heard of a vampire breaking in to take some Polaroids.
There's another idea for a movie.
Vampires are terrifying creatures. Of course they are. That's part of the appeal. But you can rest easy. There are ways to defend yourself against these dark, undead creatures. For a start, if you want to detect whether someone is indeed a vampire, then a mirror will come in very handy. If they don't cast a reflection, then they are the genuine article. Once you've decided they are a vampire, then you can defend yourself against them, or at least hold them off for some time using religious icons like the crucifix, the Holy Bible, and of course, holy water. They don't like holy water one little bit. If they get too close, then a charming necklace of garlic can prevent them sinking their teeth too far into your neck, and if you feel brave, you can finish them off with a couple of facts from a good old steak using a handy-dandy mallet. The problem is, none of this stuff is consistent. If you go and see loads of vampire movies, then you'll come away with any number of different ways of trying to deter them. In some films, they hate sunlight. It turns them into toast. In other movies, they can walk around providing they're wearing neat blue sunglasses and a top hat. In some movies, they don't like water. In others, they don't like hawthorn bushes. In one particular obscure vampire movie I've seen, they can't stand anything by ABBA before 1974. So you see, you want to stick to the basics. The garlic, the steak, the Bible. Never let you down.
Killed by a vampire!
Everyone has a favourite James Bond. Everyone has a favourite member of the Beatles. Everyone has a favourite sidekick for Basil Brush. But of all the actors who have played Dracula, who is the supreme Prince of Darkness? Who is the Dracula's Dracula?
I think that the Bela Lugosi was the benchmark, the best one. Yeah, he was the definitive one for me.
Power. He had it. He definitely had it. He was a wonderful looking man. And he had this rather hypnotic look about him. He never blinked. And so this is riveting for an audience. And of course, when he came out, it electrified people all over the world. And he did, of course, become the definitive player of the part.
My father actually played a successful version of Dracula on the stage play in New York on Broadway. And when Universal decided to make the movie Dracula, they had picked Lon Chaney for the lead, but he died suddenly. And they went on a search for who should play Dracula, and he was awarded the part, and the rest, of course, is history.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
My father actually created the mode of dress of the character that is the one that the public thinks of immediately when you say the word Dracula, or if you say the word Lugosi.
There are moments in that film, I mean the first one, which really are riveting, because he was an actor of immense physical presence.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
It's a name which is so firmly connected to the role of Dracula now. I was curious, what was it like for you growing up with the name Bela Lugosi?
Well, when I was younger, it didn't have much effect on me. We would go to the movies with my young friends, and they would all be afraid of Lugosi on the screen, and I never was. Once I started getting into the upper grades in school, you know, you like to be anonymous in those years, and so having that name caused me attention that I really didn't want. And so I went by Bill for many years until I went to college and law school, and then I became known as Bela.
Has it helped you in your legal career at all? Does it fill people with fear when they know that they're coming up against Bela?
They know the name as soon as I mention it, so I have instant name recognition through no fault of my own.
It's no surprise that both Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee should be among the favourite screen Draculas of all time. But there is at least one other actor who can lay claim to the crown of the Prince of Darkness, Jack Palance.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
The moment Palance appears on the screen, you can't take your eyes off.
A star.
Absolutely.
I say, you, sir, what are you doing there? This is a respectable hotel. You can't just walk around.
I think it's certainly an interesting character, and why you would want to do it, my God. There's so many opportunities in it to explore. It was, to a degree, fun to do. That was limited, really, because eventually you become so immersed in that it has an effect, a strange, macabre effect, so that I wanted to get away from there quite often. That bastard was up there watching me, obviously. Dracula. Lad, the Impaler.
You play your wits against mine. Me who commanded armies hundreds of years before you were born.
I enjoyed knowing that I was going to do Dracula. I did want to do it because of Bela Lugosi. But I think once getting into it and doing it, I was perhaps unhappy that I had accepted the role. When you become whatever the hell that character was, there aren't too many ways that you can go. You can either do the film or you can go to hell. So I chose to do the film.
In the wonderfully titled Francis Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula, we see the fictional Dracula character linked to the real-life Romanian folk hero of Vlad Tepes.
Right.
Why did he do that, and what did you think of it?
I think he was trying to say that this story that seemed to be so fantastical and a literary invention of the 1870s was actually based in something that happened hundreds of years before. So giving it some kind of historical gravitas, I think he thought would ground the story in some way or make it more important than what it was.
I don't know if you were aware of this, but a descendant of Vlad Tepes was threatening to sue Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
For his involvement. What did you hear about it?
Yeah, we heard that he was trying to. Are you going to interview him?
We've already spoken to Princess Karaja,
or
Karaja, who is the direct descendant of Vlad Tepes, who's frankly very cross.
Oh, is she?
She's very cross.
Right.
I would say she's spitting blood, but she wouldn't appreciate that from me.
The one who really hurted and did a big wrong thing to Vlad Tepes' memory, Dracula, was Coppola, and that was the reason of my trial. I wanted him to show me the book where Bram Stoker said, I came home, la la la, I impaled a crucifix and blood came out, I drank it and I became a vampire and so on. If he got that, show me that, I have nothing to say.
I think it's a good idea, and it comes from the authentic story. So whereas I say that this is, in a way, the most authentic version to the Stoker book, it does have this one innovation, which, because it's authentic to history, I thought was a good change.
I am Dracula. It's the most exhausting thing I've ever had to do.
Come in.
And it's hard to analyze or take apart how I really approached it, because in a strange kind of way, well, with most scripts you have like a metaphysical reaction to it, like you do when you meet someone or you look at a painting or you hear a piece of music or whatever. You know, it will either affect you or it won't. I mean, I read the script and I thought, oh, I could do this. I was in a strange place for a while there. I had a casket up at my house. It was a gift from Francis. So, I can't reveal whether I ever used it, but...
He used to go out howling with the wolves, apparently, things like that. I mean, he just was quite... He was quite terrifying at the time. I mean, I was scared of him, but I don't know if that was him or me wanting to be terrified of him.
I loved the touch, although again it's not Stoker. I'm turning away from the camera, with the blood on the knife, licking it, and this expression of bliss comes over his face before he turns around.
It's dark and oppressive and very, very, very sorrowful and sad and tortured. A tortured soul.
God, who are you? I know you.
I have crossed oceans of time to find you.
Like the human part, the romantic part to that story. It was incredible. I think it gave a whole other view to how we see vampires. That this was someone that was just got so angry and so hurt and so disappointed in everything that he lived for that woman, you know? And I think that's a wonderful story.
Of course, the legend of Dracula didn't just appear out of thin air like some foul-smelling mist. There's plenty of superstitious, anecdotal evidence stretching back hundreds of years that supports the existence of real-life vampires. In part 3, I'll be going in search of some of them, like a vampire vigilante.
But Dracula has inspired more than just screams. His is the face and the fangs that's launched 1,000 quips.
Why don't we do what they did to your friend Dracula? Drive a spike through his heart.
No, I don't really feel like driving tonight.
Shame.
I'm Thomas Renfield, solicitor from London, to see Count Dracula. Oh my! Oh dear! Oh dear! Oh! Ah!
Children of the night, what a mess they make. I am Count... Dracula.
I saw you at the docks. You're a liar, a thief, and a cheat.
No, that's my brother Miles. I'm the honest one in the family.
Well, that's unfortunate. Because that's what I liked about you.
Hey, easy, bro. Hey, now, come on. You ain't got to pull that Dracula with me, all right? If you're hungry, I'll run you down to KFC down the street and hit you off with a 2-piece.
I already had to tell you.
Bram Stoker's other role model for Dracula was a woman, Countess Bathory, who back in the 16th century was infamous for her unusual beauty regime, which included bathing in the blood of young virgins, in the mistaken belief that it would keep her young and beautiful. I found bathing with young virgins certainly cheers you up no end, but does nothing necessarily for your skin.
Countess Dracula, that wasn't her name, based again on a historic person, Elizabeth Bathory, Hungarian, related to the royal family.
And she was the biggest serial killer of all time. Do you know she murdered over 650 girls? I mean, it was just horrendous. She was the most notorious, heinous, horrendous person I've ever known about.
She lived in a castle and she sent out her hags, her minions, supposedly women, to find beautiful and extremely healthy young ladies.
What is it, man?
And they were kidnapped. They were taken to her castle, where they were murdered. And she bathed in their blood.
It all started when one of her serving wenches combed her hair and pulled her hair, and she hit her with a comb, and the blood spluttered onto her face.
Get out!
She then insisted that this spluttering of blood had actually beautified her skin.
That is historic fact, because she believed that to bathe in the blood of young women was the key to immortality. She was tried, and because she was related to the royal family, she was not executed. But she indeed was condemned to a terrible death. She was walled up in a room for many, many years, and she lived there for a long, long time before she died.
Well, she had it coming.
She did indeed.
His master is indeed, as you rightly said, a monster. He is also a vampire.
A vampire? But vampires are bats.
The bat. He has dominion over some animals. And bats, being creatures of the dark like himself...
Don't vampire bats drink blood?
They do.
Frank, tell me what you can about the vampire bats, because they do actually exist, don't they?
Certainly do, yeah. It's a very small, innocuous-looking bat from South and Central America. It's about the same size as the small ones that are flying around here. It's the same family.
That's about, what, 3-4 inches long?
Yeah, with a wingspan of about 8 inches. So it's a very, very small bat.
And these animals eat blood? Do they live off the blood, or is it just a little tasty extra snack?
No, they live entirely off the blood.
And where do they get most of their blood from? I mean, do they suck the blood of human beings?
Yes. They don't suck blood at all, actually. They lap it. And what they do is they take out 2 tiny little grooves with their incisors. Usually very soft areas, the neck, around the genitals, the toes, anywhere where there's very, very sparse hair, very sparse feathers. And they lick the wounds. The saliva contains anticoagulant so the blood continues to flow, and will flow for anything up to 8 hours after the animal's left them. The bite itself is insignificant. It's, for a cattle to lose maybe a quarter of a pint of blood is nothing, it doesn't hurt it. But unfortunately they carry some rather nasty viruses, particularly rabies.
Count Dracula, the original Batman, was dreamed up in the fetid imagination of a bearded, rather stuffy-looking individual, Bram Stoker. So how did this ex-civil servant and manager of the Victorian actor Sir Henry Irving come to create the ultimate time-travelling stalker?
At a very early age, he had an extraordinary and inexplicable illness which confined him to his bedroom for about 7 years. And his mother, Charlotte, who was a formidable woman, told him bedtime stories of the cholera plague, which had reached her family home in County Sligo in Ireland. And they barricaded themselves inside. It was pretty gruesome. Most of the people died. There were looters robbing the empty houses after people were carried away, coffin makers knocking at the door, and one day she saw a hand creeping through the skylight of a looter, and she seized an axe and cut it off. He obviously was fascinated by horror, but what really clinched it, I think, was when he met Professor Ominius Vombury, who was one of those Hungarians who took part in the Great Game and spied in the Middle East, disguised as dervishes. And I'm sure it was from Vombury that he heard about Transylvania, and probably the first time he heard the name of Dracula.
The physical description of Dracula is almost certainly taken from the association that Bram Stoker had with Sir Henry Irving, because for many, many years he was his manager and was devoted to him. And if you look at the pictures of Henry Irving, it doesn't take very much imagination to see that he does resemble very much the character that Stoker describes when you first see him.
Irving was, in his way, a vampire. He drained people around him. He took Bram for granted. Bram saw him as a Superman. He was Bram's hero.
Surely he can't have been completely unaware of the erotic message, the subtext.
I think I know it seems impossible, but then a lot seems impossible by our standards today. His relationship with Irving would today, of course, be featured heavily in the tabloids, to their bafflement, I would have thought. I think it was subconscious.
My brain, at least, is fevered when I'm writing, so a lot goes in there. But then, when it's finished, then you can talk about the subtext. And I'm sure with Bram Stoker, it wasn't there. He just worked by instinct, which to me is the best way to write.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is sort of all moist and all wet and, you know, hot. Yeah, it's horny stuff.
So did Bram Stoker himself know how big the book was, how popular it was? Did he reap any of the financial benefits?
He had no inkling that he'd written a book that was to become one of the great myths and industries of the 20th century.
Well, I think it's a terribly well-constructed book. You don't often get that in film concepts of it. But the way it moves about from one character's adventures to another is masterly, I think, and so it is a great literary work on its own right.
Would you consider playing the Count again if the script were close to the Bram Stoker novel, which you cherish?
The answer is yes, I would play him again, but only on one condition, that it really is the book, in every respect, that Bram Stoker wrote. The physical description, the lines, not all of them, obviously, the names of the characters, the locations, that it is exactly what he wrote. Because in all the years they'd made films about this character, in all the years, to this day, it's never been done.
Here's to him. May he rest in peace. Count Dracula.
Count Dracula.
Why do you think men and women like seeing these movies?
I think we enjoy to have an element of fear. I think we enjoy wondering if the bogeyman's going to get us.
Garlic to keep out the bogeyman. There is no bogeyman anymore. And if there was, this wouldn't keep him out.
I don't know. I think there's still, the mystery is still there. You know, there's still all that silence and all those things that go on at night.
It's more like a bloody vampire, that one. It's only a joke.
It's like watching, you know, blood splurting all over the news every night. You know, you watch it with a sort of morbid fascination.
There's been 3 deaths round here lately. None of them by natural causes. Just a scream in the night and then found there, pale as death.
I think to see something titillating that is a fear of something they know nothing about, I think that is what they like about horror films.
It's in a way like Dracula himself. It's travelled time. It's lasted, you know.
Can Dracula really be as old as it says here?
We believe it's possible. Vampires are known to have gone on from century to century. Records show that Count Dracula could be 500 or 600 years old.
Do you have a favourite scene then between you and Peter Cushing from the movies, a favourite showdown between the two characters?
Well, it has to be the first film, which I disintegrated at the end. As you know, if you've seen the film, Peter manages to shake himself off from my grasp, leaps onto the table, charges along the table, leaps onto the curtains. The light comes through, and of course it's daylight, and I literally fall apart. And it was immensely effective, there's no question about that, immensely effective.
So we came in search of Dracula, and we found a myth. More than a myth, a legend. Bram Stoker's blood-sucking Count may be no more than a mishmash of old wives' tales and infamous historical characters, but our lasting fascination for him is based upon something very real indeed. Our fears of death and sex, our doomed quest for immortal life and immortal love. Then again, it could just be the rubber bats, the heaving bosoms in diaphanous gowns, and the terrible special effects that wouldn't scare a fly, even an especially cowardly one. Whatever the source of your dark pleasure, one thing seems certain. Dracula lives, and not even Peter Cushing, with his trustiest mallet and stake, could lay the old count to rest forever.